You're listening to the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast, hosted by Lisa Rozier, featuring attorney Dave Zampano, along with frequent guests. Whether you're a seasoned estate planning attorney, an attorney looking to add estate planning and elder law to your existing list of practice areas, or you're just starting out, this podcast will give you a solid plan for success. Listen now as Dave and his guests share their personal journeys to practice success and the insights they learned along the way.
Hello and welcome to the Practice Success Podcast. I'm Lisa Rozier, joined with Dave Zampano and our special guest today, Mitchell Lansky from Memphis, Tennessee, law firm titled the Lansky Law Firm. Mitchell, thank you for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to adding what I can to the podcast and to the community.
That's great.
Well, that's typically you, Mitchell, that I've come to know. And, you know, our audience are lawyers. Some might be in the LWP community. Some might thinking about the LWP community. Some might not even care about the LWP community. But the focus of this podcast really is on practice success. And what I love about, and I think about you in particular around this, is everyone gets their own version of practice success. Not everybody has to have the big flashy lights and the big names on the sides of the bus. A lot of different people have a lot of different ways. I call them the under the radar. And I always seen you that way, Mitchell. You're an under the radar guy. You have a good, solid practice. You're happy. You go to work every day. You enjoy your practice, which is a lot to be said. A lot of lawyers don't enjoy their practice. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background? How is it? How long you've been practicing law? How long in the estate planning area? I assume that's your key area. And whether you transition from any other areas of law.
Okay. So, yeah, I think I have a fairly interesting story. Excuse me. I hate to... I don't always like to go on this part, but I've been practicing a long time. And of course, when you've been practicing a long time, that obviously means that you're a little bit older than what you really want to be. But I have been practicing almost 40 years in this area.
I didn't know that long. You don't even look 40 years old.
Yeah, well, I'm not. It's a little bit less than 40, so I'm pushing it. But yeah, it's close, too close. Yeah. And my journey it was a little bit strange starting off because I always knew I liked taxes and working in the tax world. And I did get my master's in tax. And I actually got a job with a corporation for a few years. Loved doing that. And somehow I got totally involved in that corporation and ended up being the General Counsel. And that process was really interesting because I was in my very young 30s at that point. And for me to be a General Counsel, I'd walk into rooms and people are like, okay, where's your boss? And nope, it's me. It was amazing because it was a fairly decent sized corporation. It was a blast. We imploded because we were part of a worldwide conglomerate and they kind of needed different things. So I left the practice, but I continued to do work with this company. And of course, because of my tax background, I always wanted to do estate planning. So that's where my focus has been. What happened though, along the way is that taxes no longer drove estate planning. And so about in 2014, I knew I needed to start updating myself or do something in order to be able to continue to practice. And literally, in my vision of practicing law, it's to help people. I really, that is something you can go back and look at a little book I did in like second grade, and I don't know why I did this, but they asked what I wanted to be. And I put in there that I wanted to be an astronaut first, didn't make that one, but my backup was to be a lawyer because I wanted to help people. And that's back in the second grade. I didn't even know if I knew what an attorney was, but that's something that I go back.
Well, that's what I call sticking with it.
I did. And so, and it got to be with estate planning, I wasn't helping as many people because I didn't understand elder care. I didn't understand Medicaid. I didn't understand these various different items because my whole practice had been so much on the tax aspect. So I joined Lawyers with Purpose. I looked around, tried to figure out how can I learn this best, and that's where I found Lawyers with Purpose. And so that began my journey. Part of the process, though, as I said, I have always been in a small practice. I left the corporate world, started my own, and joined with maybe one or two other attorneys. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. I kind of like to do things my way.
Imagine that, a lawyer that wants to do things their way.
Imagine that. And then, so I ended up joining with another attorney that I've been practicing a long time with, but he didn't practice that often. In fact, I was surprised when he told me he was retiring because I thought he had already retired. But in any event, so I pretty much had my own practice, but I never have had good processes. And of course, as I said, I needed to learn more information. So that's what I've done. And I look at my journey with Lawyers with Purpose, and over these 8 years, it's a journey. I don't think I'll ever be at the end. I will never have the perfect practice because I don't think you ever get to that point. It's all about the journey and how you do that. And I'm thankful to LWP, to Dave and Lisa, people who work with me, and like, gosh, this guy is still trying to learn this. But
Lifetime learner. Yeah.
It's the way I work.
So Mitchell, let me ask you a couple of questions, because one of the things that's important to me when we do these podcasts is that it's not about LWP. Because again, what I would love to do, and we shared this with you before we went on, and you said, well, I don't know how I'm going to talk about all this without talking about LWP. Here's what I'd like you to do. Just because I don't want this to be a sales pitch for LWP, although right. I don't mind you sharing your experience. But if you can anchor to what would you define as the core elements that you learned here that you believe someone needs to know, whether they learn it from us or someone else? What are the core things that, the transition of that traditional tax, higher end practice to this more mainstream, everybody, Medicaid and asset protection and that practice of helping what I call the 99.8%.
Okay. Well, once again, one of my key ingredients, one of my core ingredients, obviously this is a job. I make my living through this. I have been relatively successful. So, but my idea of success is not to be a multimillionaire or anything else. I just want to be comfortable. My core item is to help people. And if I'm not helping people, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not getting the satisfaction out of what I do. I am one of the fortunate people. I don't think I will ever retire, mainly because I enjoy what I'm doing. And as long as I'm helping folks, that is what I enjoy. So the most important thing in my practice is to be able to help people with the various issues. I don't worry. Sometimes I should worry if they can pay me or not pay me. I figure enough can that I get by. And so that's not the issue. But of course, we always know we take on certain cases, helping people, and we come to find out they have all these little wrinkles and different things into it that can bring a whole lot more. But as I do understand, that's part of the process. So the
what do you think
when you look
back in your ability to help people now and the things that you've experienced here, what are the specific things that you anchor back to that have made you more efficient or enabled you to help more people and maybe even get paid more from the people as well?
Well, one thing is basic, the knowledge. There was some knowledge that I needed to understand. And this is a very, as I think one of the things that you had said, Medicaid training is an exception to an exception to exception, and trying to understand how to work with these various agencies it's a tough item. So my ability to work with them and to go and talk with some of these people at these agencies and knowing and understanding the law and the different items, that has been something that's been very extremely important to me. The other thing is trying to have a process. And that is the thing that I'm still working on. But that to me is a vital component, because I am trying my best that it's not everything on me. And a process allows me to put things to other people, to let other people know what's going on, that I can take a step back, that it's not critical, that I'm in touch with everybody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even though most of my clients, I admit, they think I am, and they will attempt that. Part of the
so really
process,
being
though,
able to delegate some part of your roles to other people in the office you trust and know that everything's going to get done timely for the sake of the client. Lisa, you're thinking.
Yeah, I was just curious, Mitchell, for our listeners, how big is your team? Your
okay,
staff?
so my team right now, I've had a client service coordinator, who basically for most practices, she is my right hand. I try to make sure she knows everything that's going on, mainly because she has a much better memory than me, especially client names and different people. She'll get to know my clients sometimes better than me. So that's very valuable to me. And her name is Ruth Griffin, and she's been with me for over 5 years. So she's part of my team, obviously an important part. And I've always liked to have a legal intern or someone to help. And I've tried to get law students. And then if I find someone I like, I try to keep them. And
Right.
so I currently have a law student. She's just finished her first year. She's very bright. She's very willing. And so she's part of my team now. And the idea is to incorporate her more and more into the practice as she goes through law school. And if it goes the way that I would like, she would eventually join us at some point in time in a full-time capacity. So that is what I'm doing. And with the processes, I'm getting her to help push me on. And she's also helping me with some, I'm hoping, as we get a little bit older, we're not as technical as we once were. I used to be an expert in plugging in a stereo system, but there's no such thing as a stereo system anymore. The idea of just trying to get your email to work, and to get your PC to do what it's supposed to go every day, is a lot. So from that point of view, I want some help. And there, also looking at new avenues and new things that we want to look at. There is, and this is not a sell job from LWP, I understand that, but there is one new feature that they're offering. I'm not very comfortable with it. I'm trying to learn it, trying to see if it's something that is worthwhile. And so I'm trying to get her to help that. One more core item that I do want to bring up is the idea of, working with other people. And so the idea that we work with financial planners or whatever, I've been fortunate. I've worked with a couple of good ones that has worked out well. I'm trying to develop a new one right now with a relatively young financial planner who would address some of the, working with the younger people, people who are not interested in Medicaid and those type of issues and the elder law, and trying to see how I can build up and how I can offer them services.
Yeah. It's interesting, Mitchell. I love what you said that, there's this thing we're offering that you're not quite bought into yet. And I think that really illustrates something important. One of the things, I've preached since the day you've met me, and anyone who's ever worked with me, whether they're in my organization or not, understands that everything to me goes back to the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And you got to have systems and processes. You got to be system dependent, not person dependent. So that time when, I remember that time when, oh my God forbid Betty ever leaves, I'll be crippled. Well, I don't have those concerns anymore. Now, the good news is I don't have anyone leaving either. Most of our people have been a long time because they like the security of systems and processes. They like to know they can have a vacation without worrying about, clients' needs being met. And that's all possible with systems and processes. But what I love is this new area that you're challenged with. I'm assuming you're referencing the guider.
I am.
Yeah, the guider. And that's a real thing. I mean, lawyers are adverse to, the idea of digitization of the practice of law. And what I love is I'm okay. Go at your own pace. It's your firm, your way. And I think the key thing here is the ability for you to grow your practice at a level. You know what I love is you're someone who's satisfied and really has a life that they want. And then we always teach success. Why you're on the Practice Success podcast is because you're successful. You have the practice you've wanted. Now, you struggled with being able to service clients in all areas. So you've learned the knowledge and you've gotten some systems in place and you've started to build your team for that. But you've done it to the level you're comfortable with. And again, like you said, you're always learning. So if you had to really stretch and push yourself a little bit, what would be the next area you think you would kind of head toward and engaging in so that you can continue to add and support more people out there in your community?
Well, that's part of the process that I'm working on right now is the guider. I would like to be able to work with more than just elder folks and bring something really to the table that is worthwhile to them. So that is one of my stretches that I'm doing there. And I always, the one thing that has never been able to work here, and I've been trying to, we just can't in my town, and I know people say this about their towns, we just don't do workshops here. This town just does not do them. But I have incorporated like a webinar on my website, and I get people to watch that, and it does add a lot to the conversation. And once again, I keep going back. I want to help people. I can help people the best if they understand what all their options are, and the more information I can get for them, and the more items that they know and understand. So that is also very important to me, that I can continue to try to educate people and let people know. I do want to try to work with some different type of institutions. I'm actually on a board of a nursing home. I'm also trying to reach out to a few more. The idea of talking with funeral directors, and because I know a lot of people get to that point and they're overwhelmed. And if there's something that I can do, so those are the different things that I have learned along the way that I want to keep growing to. And unfortunately, in today's world, I think if you're not growing at least a little bit, you're fading away. And so I don't want to fade away. I want to keep going. I want to keep, I learn something every day. The one thing I know is that I don't know everything. That's the most positive thing I know. So there's always something for me more to learn. And I'm always trying to learn that and trying to understand that. And once again, just trying to be the best advocate I can for the people that come to me to help them.
So as we wrap up here, it's amazing how quick our time always goes, Mitchell. Looking back at your journey and your practice and how you do things, what's one piece of advice you would have for attorneys out there that you think will help move them from where, you were one time to maybe where you are now?
I think the one thing is that kind of what in a way I just mentioned, you've got to keep growing. You got to keep expanding your thought process. You can't take this idea that I know it all and the way I do it is the only way to do it. You got to be open-minded, and you got to push yourself a little bit to get a little bit outside your comfort zone and work these. There'll be some areas that you won't like and you'll back off, but other areas you'll find that you learn and it's worthwhile and it keeps you going and keeps you, for nothing else, younger and vital and integral to our process.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mitchell. It's so good having you here. And I look forward to seeing you at the next taper get together. I always love being with the LWP community when we get to be together. But thank you for sharing your story, because I know there's someone listening today that has a similar story to you and says, this Mitchell guy, I'm kind of like him. And I like the journey he's on, and I want to try and follow in his footsteps. So thank you for sharing that. Lisa, I'll let you wrap.
Yeah, and Mitchell, just for closing remarks, if somebody would like to reach out to you, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, I love people reaching out to me, so that is great. My email is usually the best way to reach me. And that email address is fairly easy if you know my name. It's M. Lansky, so the M for Mitchell and Lansky at mlanskylaw.com. So I think it's fairly easy. But if they want to, and I'm pretty good. I usually will not go home at night until I've answered everything I can or return phone calls for the most part. But I enjoy that part. I enjoy sharing whatever knowledge. So yes.
Well, thank you, Mitchell. I appreciate that. And for our listeners out there, if you want to listen to additional success stories, go to lawyersofpurpose.com, click on the Practice Success Podcast. You'll be able to see listen to over 20 episodes. And if you would like to be a guest on our show, please go ahead and fill out the contact form, and we'd love to have you on our show.
Even if you're not a member, we'd love to know what makes you successful.
Anybody.
We want to know what makes you successful. Yes.
Yep. Come on in for the conversation. We'd love to have it with you. So that's a wrap. Again, lawyersofpurpose.com, Practice Success Podcast button. And Mitchell, as always, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great conversation. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Practice Success Podcast. Visit www.lawyerswithpurpose.com/podcast to listen to other episodes and to subscribe. We'll see you next time.